Funding for Colores was provided in part by the Nalita E. Walker Fund, KNME TV Endowment Fund, the Great Southwestern Arts and Education Endowment Fund, and viewers like you. This time on Colores. In this Colores special, Site Santa Fe creators discuss the need for a thought-provoking contemporary artistic dialogue in New Mexico.
In a city, in a state where there is so much extraordinary art being made, we're looking at that art that is really at the forefront of not only redefining what art can be, but really challenging your own perceptions of your world.
It's all ahead on Colores. Site Santa Fe's mission is to support and celebrate contemporary art.
At the heart of the art movement in New Mexico is Site Santa Fe. Site Santa Fe gets to act as an incubator, as a facilitator, as a curator, and an educator of contemporary art in New Mexico, and we're excited to have representatives of Site Santa Fe here today. What is important about art in New Mexico, and how does Site fit into that? How does Site expand the idea?
We are bringing artists to New Mexico. We are working with artists who live locally in New Mexico, and we are giving them opportunities to experiment, to make new work, to push the boundaries of their practice and to push our audience, to push us. And when we say contemporary art, what we're talking about are artists and artwork that is really mirroring what's going on in contemporary culture, what's going on in contemporary life, perhaps politics. Like what is happening in our lives today, artists are taking that information and showing us new ways to look at our world, challenge us to look at our world differently, show us perspectives that are different from our own. And so when we talk about contemporary art in a city, in a state where there is so much extraordinary art being made, we're looking at that art that is really at the forefront of not only redefining what art can be, but really challenging your own perceptions of your world.
It's an important point to broaden the definition of art today. I always like to say that for me, I became an artist. It is the right term for what I do, but it doesn't always feel like the right term. It's this umbrella term to put all these other passions under. So there's a model of the artist that I don't know has translated so well to a broader audience as far as this multifaceted approach. Like I often get that question. If I say I'm an artist, it usually goes to, are you a painter? If I say I struggle to meet them on their terms and I say I'm a sculptor, that immediately goes to, do you use metal or stone? So it's always an interesting reflection of a broader understanding culturally of art that is really out of sync with contemporary artists. So, and it's not that art doesn't encompass all those other mediums. It's just art has mutated from its inception, and it will continue to. And artists adapt to our times, and this time we live in requires different tools. It requires different skill sets, especially in our internet age. Like I'm so fascinated our young artists who have now fully grown up, who've only ever known the internet. You know, how will their tool sets need to change correspondingly? So that happens, and sometimes I don't quite know why the image of the artist kind of got carved in stone in a sense, and it just stayed that way.
Literally.
Because
Michelangelo did.
Yes, because it mutates, and I would argue that that's one of the beauties of art is that it mutates, and it should. Like you said, it mirrors culture in most optimistic sense. It offers ways forward. But to do that, you need to accurately mirror what's around you. So that's why to reposition the artist as a thinker, and even Site as a think tank. I really like this term, because that is a way people understand a certain type of knowledge base that's worthy in its own right. When you use a word like think tank, And that is what I think Sight does, and I would be an artist of that generation that thinks like that.
Where do you think contemporary art fits into the larger kind of definition of art in New Mexico?
Well, there are many wonderful contemporary artists working in the state. And so not only are we bringing their work to an audience, but we're also bringing artists from around the world. It's an important dialogue that we can have at Sight for the creative community, bringing artists from the outside and giving opportunities for artists who live here.
As part of the Sight Santa Fe staff, what kind of questions do you get asked when patrons come in the door and this is their first time in a contemporary art gallery?
You know, a lot of time we get asked, like, what does this mean? Like, what is this stuff? Because contemporary art is often conceptual. And so there's a lot of layers of meaning often. And so at Sight, we try not to answer those questions because we believe that everybody has a capacity for visual literacy, which means if you can experience a work of art, then you can bring in your own personal experiences and understanding to have your own meaning, create your own meaning, and understand the piece at a certain level. So we use a dialogue-based methodology where we counter that question with other questions, like what do you think is going on in this piece? And the more that people dialogue, the more they realize that they have the answers. And there's obviously not one answer, but that's part of what makes contemporary art exciting.
I think it's interesting because people want to feel like they can read art. They want to feel like they know what they're talking about when they look at something. And so do you find this kind of inquiry-based, dialogue-based model of engagement, is it challenging to folks when they come into Sight?
No, I mean, it's not challenging because you don't need to know anything. I mean, it's like you can just start asking questions and start with what you know as opposed to having to have some deep understanding of art history or specific understanding about the artist that you're looking at. You can really just respond. And so it ends up being the opposite of challenging. It ends up being enjoyable. They've done some studies at different institutions, and it turns out that there's also a larger memory retention, that if people are talking and thinking for themselves, they remember more about their experience engaging with the work, rather than having a guide tell them about the work itself.
What does Sight bring to this community in New Mexico as far as elevating artists as problem solvers?
Well, I think some of that comes from the invitation to an artist, right? Just from the very beginning, that we are interested in working with artists who have this incredible curiosity, who would really benefit from the kind of space, time, opportunity that Sight represents. What I mean by that is our institution is incredibly flexible. We want to go there with an artist as they're experimenting, as they're pushing their work into new territory. We have a 4,000 square foot workshop in the back of our building. So yes, sometimes artists come to our building and make things in wood or metal or whatever it is. So that is there. But within the institution, we also have an infrastructure at Sight that allows for research, that allows for artists, whether they are from New Mexico or from elsewhere, to use the resources, not only of our institution, but of our city and of our state, the history of this place, the landscape of this place. All of that can be the spark for an artist's next project. And so what we allow is that time for an artist to come here, think about this place, respond in some cases. With so many contemporary artists, there isn't a medium. It's the idea. And the idea, the research, the collaboration, however that artist works, that will then lead to what the form should be. Does that ring true for you?
Very true.
The form comes after that. And that form is sometimes created by the artist's hand, maybe created in our workshop, but also might be created in a more collaborative process with other makers, fabricators. And so that kind of the definition of contemporary art it becomes very broad when you think of it that way.
Well, and I would add it's not just other makers. I mean, a lot of our collaborative projects involve other nonprofit organizations. Because we give artists a long time frame to develop their projects, they have the opportunity to learn and grow and research. And so artists connect with organizations like the Santa Fe Institute to connect with complex science and scientists who are working in their think tank over there. But we have artists who are working with us to break down barriers between the deaf and hearing communities. We have artists that are working with us through with organizations that serve homeless and immigrant populations. And so it's not the act of making. The idea of that is completely transformed when we work with artists on a long-term process.
I'm interested in this evolving definition of an artist from, let's say, a profession, like what do you do and what do you do it with, versus a paradigm. And so I'm asking you really specifically, Dario, what is your art? And talk a little bit more about your work.
Well, I am at first an object maker. So sculptor doesn't quite feel right, but it is object-based. I love the power of objects. It is a deep investigation of materials. I've used things from meteorites to raindrops, million-year-old raindrops trapped in amber, dinosaur bones, to melted vinyl records. So pretty much anything's on the table for exploration in my work, which I really value. But as Irene said earlier, it is still about ideas. And none of the object or the material doesn't alone satisfy me. It has to merge with profound ideas, I hope. They translate as profound, but they are to me, hopefully, when I'm working on them. So it's this merger of object, material, idea for me. And what I'm hoping to do here as an artist in residence at site will rely on all those things, but a few other things we talked about earlier, which is collaboration as its own type of material, and how that will shape my ideas moving forward. Roughly a year and a half from now, we'll have a project more fully developed, but that's one of the beauties of site, is that an artist can come with a seed of an idea, and because with the resources of the institution, I can shape it in ways I couldn't have done otherwise. And that's another, back to our point about what is site's value. This is a huge one for the artist. And hopefully that translates and is beneficial to everyone, the artist, the community, and the institution.
And that's Joanne's job, to take the benefit to the artist, to transform that or transfer that to benefit for the community. So what's our vision for Dario?
Overall speaking, in terms of the artists that we bring in for artist in residence projects, it has to be a symbiotic relationship. It's not just what can the artist do for the community, but also if the community engages deeply with the artist as well. So, so an artist that we would select, there's a reason why we think they would be a good fit for our community. So in Dario's case, his interest in connecting with science and furthering the field of both arts and science through the connection of those, I mean, we think of it as like transdisciplinary, like Dario's a transdisciplinary artist, and we have in Santa Fe, the Santa Fe Institute, which is a major, important hub for complexity science. I mean, it's world renowned. And so some of the things that Dario's investigating with his work relates to what the scientists are working on, but they don't often work with artists. And so there's a benefit to engaging an artist within that conversation because it brings in a different perspective, which then can transform, like I said, transform both fields.
What we've been talking about is our longer lead projects. You know, we've been working with Dario already for many months, and the project will go on for another year and a half or more. And then you'll see the result of that project in an exhibition at site. Well, in addition to that kind of engagement with our audience, all along the way, there are, whether it's Dario or any number of the artists that we work with in this way, they're connecting with students, with young people, and who are invited in to follow the process, to meet the artists. The artists that we're working with also, greatly value sort of the opportunities to mentor young students, and not just young art students. That's a big part of who we work with in this stage, but other kinds of classes of young people are able to come in. Science classes, we work with health classes. We've worked with writing classes, creative writing classes, and so there are opportunities all along the way to invite students to have conversations about the process, meet the artists, kind of understand this very different kind of definition of how to be a professional artist, how to be a working artist. So that's an important part of the work that Joanne does all year round with our artists.
Having artists connect directly with students and experiential education opportunities has major benefits in terms of transformation within our public school system and school system in general. And so at SITE, we like to fight for the value of creativity everywhere.
Can you give us an example of a project that SITE is doing right now, engaging the community?
Yes, so in particular with Dario's project, we'll be working with students. This relates to a project that is at the core, I would say, of his investigation, which relates to the Voyager mission from 1977 of sending a message outside of the solar system. A lot of the voices up till now in that particular project of what message gets sent out of the solar system does not include the voices of young people within the community of New Mexico. And the voices of young, diverse people are really important voices to be heard. So it expands the conversation to places where it wouldn't have been brought before.
A little primer, it's the golden record that was aboard the Voyagers that was the actual attempt, one of the few attempts we've actually made to get a message outside of our solar system. It's a beautiful story. I hope everybody knows or will be curious to go look up the golden record and what was attempted. To me, it's as much art as it was science. But there are a few problems that can fine-tune our investigation about who we are when asking, are we alone? And that is, it's a new lens on an old problem about who are we? So the challenge of a time capsule, I think, is a great concept to help focus that problem. And working with the teens, I have quite a lot to say about the concept of time capsules, their value culturally. And I want to bring that knowledge into the community and help them really think about who they are, what is their responsibility to the person next to them, even more broadly, what is their responsibility to their great-great-grandchildren? Because these time capsules ultimately have to communicate multi-generationally. So that's what I'm going to be doing, is developing a course with these students to kind of really look at the history of previous attempts. What strategies did they use? What worked or didn't work? What, in 2016, what can we add to the conversation that was not there in 1977? So it's not just for us, which is a great reason in and of itself, but maybe it's for not only our great-great-grandchildren, but perhaps a future where we have to understand intelligences outside of our own planet.
So talk about the challenges in your work at SITE, the challenges you might have with the community, sometimes the challenges you have with the artists, not with Dario, with other challenging artists. Can you tell us a little bit about those challenges?
Well, one of the things that can be a challenge is we are embarking on a project with an artist where we don't know the end result. We don't know what our investment in time and resources will yield, right? And so there is a very, in one way of looking at this, there's a very high level of risk, and yet our threshold for risk is even higher, right? And that's really, really important. That means that it's in our DNA to step out there and take these risks. And there aren't many museums that operate this way. There's a lot at stake. We raise all the money for our institution. We have donors to answer to. All those kinds of things. In certain kinds of museums, embarking on a project where we don't know where it's going to take us can be really, really scary for everyone in that institution, and that's not the case at SITE. And so for many people, they think that was the riskiest part.
Is it because you guys trust your process? Is it because you trust your process for selecting projects and selecting artists?
We trust our process, the mission of the institution. This is our DNA, to take risks with an artist, to experiment. And so, yes, there's our track record, our ability to also, we challenge an artist when we're first having a conversation with them. We have questions we want to know from them before we embark on this, and they're not about what do you want to make, what are you going to make, what's it going to look like, but we want to know more about their process, and we can find out through those questions whether they're going to be open to this as we are.
What do you think your role is in the community and your responsibility is as far as carrying the banner of contemporary art?
We have a huge responsibility to community. We don't want, we need the artists to deeply engage with the community and not do any kind of surface reading. We don't want artists coming from somewhere else telling people in the community what our community is. It's a pitfall that artists fall into, which it just happens sometimes.
And
so
institutions.
Yeah, and institutions. And so it's really important. I mean, and that's part of the reason why we give a longer time frame in the resources that we do, is because the artists oftentimes need to connect on a deeper level. And so if they are, if they're working on a topic where there's multiple perspectives in the community that are really important to be understood, the artist has to spend that time engaging within the community on those topics. And so then it's my role to make sure that the artists don't fall into those traps, being a member of the community and having an understanding of the makeup of the people who live in Santa Fe and New Mexico.
We are constantly not only looking at sort of what is happening in the contemporary art world and bringing that here, but we're always also looking at our own institution and how we're doing things and questioning, even when we've done things for a while, questioning those. And so that makes our institution really dynamic and changing. I think one of the, an example of one of the things that we do that really shows our institution challenging ourselves and changing is what we've done most recently with our biennial. SITE was founded 20 years ago to present what was then the only international contemporary art biennial in the United States. That was a really big deal for the community in Santa Fe and in New Mexico. It brought attention to the already existing art world and really ignited and sparked a larger contemporary art scene in Santa Fe. After 18 years of our biennial, there were then 20 times as many biennials in the world, okay? So we suddenly had biennials in every corner of the globe. And SITE really took a look at what that meant and what we were contributing to that. So a number of years ago, we shifted the focus of our biennial from one that purported to be and proposed to be international and global to one that focused on the Americas. And so with that gesture, we shift the whole axis of the art world, which is very much east-west, to one that looks north-south, with the Pan American Highway passing right outside the door here. And so now what you see from SITE, in addition to the projects, the kinds of projects that we've been talking about that are an artist working with us on a long-term project. Sometimes those projects are in fact embedded in our biennial. But in addition to these kind of longer-term projects, we also have this every other year exhibition that now looks at the many voices in the Americas, and that is curated by a group of curators that represents the diversity of voices that exist throughout the Americas. And so we're stepping into some bold new territory, not just for SITE, but I would say also for the contemporary art world.
How does SITE bring us closer together?
It helps create common ground. often and at times between people who may not have much in common or think they have much in common, but through a shared experience of an artwork, even if we disagree about it, that shared experience and that shared engagement is something that can be really exciting and really important to the work that we do.
Next time on Colores, painter Cedro Wood considers how we live in our environment to create work that is plausible yet seems unrealistic. Iconoclastic artist Chad Person creates collages using U.S. banknotes.
I always start from kind of a place of personal conflict or observation.
Albuquerque painter Maud Andrade shares the process behind her abstracted landscapes and narratives.
Almost everything is autobiographical, but when I come to a new series of paintings, I'm not thinking, I'm going to address this part of my life. That doesn't enter in at all. I just start.
Until next time, thank you for watching. Funding for Colores was provided in part by the Nelita E. Walker Fund, KNME TV Endowment Fund, the Great Southwestern Arts and Education Endowment Fund, and viewers like you.